Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the final event in our fall seminar series, today created by the PDMI Workshop Council, the perks of using original music in a D2C campaign. We welcome all of you to today's event, PDMI members and non-members alike. If you're not a PDMI member but are attending today, we'd love to have you consider joining the association. There's no better way to support the mission of PDMI than joining and sharing your voice in the direction of the industry. In the handouts tab of your control panel, you'll find our PDMI membership brochure. I urge you to download it, flip through it, and contact any of our team members should you desire more information. One more housekeeping note. The group will be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the webinar. You know, original music and performance marketing creative is not only a valuable way to upgrade the quality of your campaign, it can also earn you some money back. Today, the PDMI Workshop Council presents this trio of original music and music publishing experts who serve performance and D2C marketers in a conversation with council member and moderator, Joseph Gray of iSpot.tv. They'll discuss what performance marketers should know about the music aspects of their ad creative and ways that marketers can actually make money from music royalties from their TV ads. Joseph will introduce the group, but let me say thank you all for joining us. Let's get started. Joseph, take it away.
Thanks for that kind introduction, Tom. I'd like to start out by wishing John Yarrington, one of the founders of the PDMI, a happy birthday. I'd also like to wish everyone a joyous holiday season and thank you for being with us today. As the founder of DR Metrics, I've had the privilege, excuse me? Okay, we're good. So as I was saying, as the founder of DR Metrics, I've had the privilege of engaging with music publishers over the years, exploring avenues to streamline music royalty collection through airing data audits. This journey has kept my curiosity piqued and has fostered interesting discussions with various performing rights organizations, such as ASCAP, BMI, and IMRA, which we call PROs or performance rights organizations. In today's session, I'm delighted to moderate a conversation featuring three industry stalwarts who are deeply entrenched in this domain. We welcome Rickey, the visionary behind Downpat Music, Bryan Miller, the innovative force behind Sensory Overload Music, and Jeffrey Veer, the trailblazing founder of ITV Media. Gentlemen, thanks for participating today and for sharing your insights on this subject. Let's dive into our conversation, beginning with Rickey. Pat, could you enlighten our audience as to the advantages of leveraging original music? And if you have any case studies, I'm sure the audience would love to hear them.
Unmute.
There you go. Unmute.
The computer is a smart computer, and while you talk, it mutes me automatically. So, yeah, you know, the perks of music are many of original music. I know Bryan and probably Jeffrey would agree that it's not just the royalty side of it. Everyone likes to start there at the elevator pitch and the booth. But really, overall, I'm sure all the composers would agree that music is at least 50% of a film, you know, the sound. So right off the bat, you're going to get a better sound quality, which means more listenable on air. You're also going to get a uniqueness that your music will not show up on another ad, a competitor's ad, or on a, there's so many overused YouTube free songs popping out there, and you hear that song or that ditty and you think it's, you know, your mop, and it's not yours, it's another mop that's copying that. So with original music, you can actually copyright it and make it unique for your campaign for all time, or just as long as it's airing. That would be number two. Number three, after all these years, I always like to ask clients, like, what was it did you like about working with Downpat Music? And, you know, I thought they're going to say, oh, the music's great, and this is super, and I love that one part, and the theme is just beautiful. I love the trumpets, the piano. And most of them say because you make it easy. And so as composers, we try and make the music process, which is difficult, easy for you as the marketers and producers. And everyone's looked for music in libraries, and there's so much of it. It's very hard to find even for us. So sometimes for us, it's easier just to compose the music. So number 3 would be easier. Finally, there is a music royalty element, as we'll be talking about today, which comes from the airing on public airwaves, whether it be radio or TV. Radio doesn't pay as much as television, but certainly there is a monetary benefit. And interesting enough, that monetary benefit exists sort of in the background. Even the library music is collecting a part of this residual. Unfortunately, when there's library music, the library collects the income, and they're not in a position to share the publishing with the marketers and clients. So by having original music is the only way that you can have a sharing arrangement in the music royalties. Couple of examples. I'll go way back and date myself to an early show called Carlton Sheets Real Estate, No Money Down. If you're over, let's say over 50 or over 45, you'll remember that campaign. It aired for 17 years. We did the original music for that show 5 years in, and had our music on that show for 12 years. And that show paid $80,000 a quarter to the client and $80,000 to the composer for 12 years. So wow. we paid them $320,000 in a row for 12 years. So that would be sort of like the heyday best case scenario. Today's shows pay a top hit like that is more in the 40 to 50,000 range, and that would be a show that's in the top few. Rates have lowered a little bit over time. So a show like Humana might pay something like 50,000 for the quarter. But I would say the average, and the others can attest, is probably more like 15 to 20, 25. The whole idea, though, is that if you use library, you're not going to be able to share in this, and you won't be able to even go there. And honestly, a lot of the library music that does air, that you select, never does go to the composers that wrote it or the publishers that made it, because it doesn't get tracked, yet the organizations are still collecting this large fund. So in a way, we like to register the music in to support our industry. Otherwise, that money stays with the PR. That's all I got.
That's great. That's great, Pat. Those are some great examples. Bryan, do you have any other examples or additional perks you'd like to throw in?
Sure. Well, I think the first perk is, original music allows you to really brand your show and set it apart from other shows. There's a real advantage of that. I mean, the most important thing is for the show to work. If the show doesn't work, then nobody can make any money. So priority number one is making the show work, make it as good as possible. And as you're creating original music, part of that is you're creating a brand, you're creating a perception. I mean, I come from a traditional advertising background, working for Wieden & Kennedy and a bunch of the big top agencies, and they obsess over music in a 30-second commercial. And I sometimes find my DRTV marketing partners don't care as much about 28 minutes of music as the traditional brands and traditional advertisers did about 30 seconds. They really obsessed about it because they understood how important it was, what you're communicating, how you're building that brand story, the perception of quality. If the music is not very good quality, then there's a subconscious association that the product is not going to be as good quality as well. So it's really important that as you're building brands, especially if the goal is to ultimately go to retail, it's really important that music stands out. The economic benefits are a secondary benefit. They can be a huge benefit. And, clients can share in that. We create partnerships with our clients, and it's been very lucrative for our partners, and worked out to be a win-win. So one example of that is I had a client that had a top 10 show, and it was all library music. And so they were collecting zero on it. So they came to me to ask me to replace that music. And so the music actually improved in the show, plus it created a very profitable split now that we split every quarter. and it was a show. It was already working. And so it was very easy to just modify that, send the show to me, and suddenly it's elevated musically, and then it's elevated economically as well for the client.
That makes a lot of sense. Jeffrey, give us your perspective on this. Oh, Jeffrey, we have to unmute you.
Yeah, sorry.
Perfect.
It's the same as Pat and Bryan. I think original music is more fitted to your product and also to the message you want to have for your target group. And yeah, you know, that's the first benefit, I think. And then your commercial will work. So yeah, the two most benefits to work with original music, it's better than library music. But on the other hand, it's what Pat is telling you. A lot of editors like to work with library music because it's easy. You can use it to your own disposal and to your own likes, and then you take that. But the downside is you don't get any money from it. So, but that's something people don't know how it really works. So, yeah, I think there are 3 or 4 points to take into account, and the more benefit is using the original music. It's much better than the library in many cases.
Jeffrey, any economic examples you want to share?
Yes, I had a client in Canada and US, and we got $1.8 million in not only a year. And then we go overseas, so we collected in I think 70 countries. So it was a huge success.
Wow. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question. Are agencies fully aware of this opportunity, and are they advocating for it? Jeffrey, let me start with you this time.
Agencies are not really aware how it really works because they're only buying the media, and they are most focusing on the exposure side. The editors and the producers maybe because they got the job to edit the creatives, right? Yeah, I think it's a topic many people are really focusing on. But yeah, it's an interesting business model for them too, if they know how it works.
The client that made 1.8 million in music royalties, obviously that offset quite a bit of the cost of media, which I'm sure was to the benefit of that agency. So perhaps we'll see, more proactive involvement on the part of the agencies going forward. Pat, what has been your experience with agencies and them advocating for this?
Well, I think that there's been a shift with no in-person contact in our industry with COVID, and I've been going out again. I went to the first PDMI supporting member of PDMI. We went to the first show, and a lot of the old-timers had retired during that time. So I think that there's at least 50% back in the game that the old-timers knew about it. Bryan and I serviced them, and there's some new blood. Bryan and I are getting older, but still we write young music, right, Bryan? And I've been running into people, say clients in their early 40s, CEOs that have never heard about this opportunity, and it kind of blows me away. So I would say before the pandemic, it was more known in the US, but I would say that once a month I talk to somebody that has never heard of it. It's on a show that's working. As Bryan said, the opportunity is, let's say you have a show and the library music is in there, and you meet the person and they want to improve the music, and you talk to them about this benefit, and a lot of the younger ones haven't heard about it. So this is great today that we can share the insights, because we only have a couple of in-person shows and they've really been ramping up. I think that Joseph has heard about it. Of course, we've heard about it, but there's still a lot of people that this is all new. And another thing to keep in mind is some of the new people think this is a scam, and because it sounds like something they have to pay for, or it sounds like something that would affect their media rates, and it's not that at all. This is a license fee that is being collected by the PROs, and if it is not distributed, it just stays with the PROs. So
yeah, songwriters are reimbursed all the time, and it doesn't matter that this is direct response television. It's the same premise. Bryan, anything you want to add to the agency adoption rate on this?
Yeah, I agree with what Pat said. There's a variety. I think more of your experienced and DRT TV marketers that have been in the game for a long time are very aware of it, but some of the new players are not aware. And there can be, again, some skepticism, but again, that fee is being paid by the broadcaster. So it's being paid by ABC and NBC and cable news networks.
And they're not raising the rates because of it, so that's the good news.
Exactly. So yeah, so it's a matter of like trying to find a partner where you can create a win-win scenario. And again, a lot of our clients, they want to have original music, one for the branding side of it, and then two for the economics as well.
So Bryan, just to retread a little bit, so when should a marketer consider using original music in their spot or infomercial?
We'll talk a little bit more about spot versus long form, but I think any long form campaign, the marketer should heavily consider using original music. There's a lot of benefits of it. We figured out ways to really minimize any costs upfront for that marketer. We, always trying to figure out creative ways to make, again, this win-win partnership. So I think for any long form campaign, it should be a strong consideration from the get-go, one, creatively, and then two, economically. Sometimes I've had clients who want to test a spot or test a long form until they're sure it's working, and then they come to me and say, hey, now we really want to do the original music approach on that. That's another choice and approach that some marketers take. But for long form, I think you should always consider it heavily from the get-go.
Okay. And Jeff, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, the same. The numbers I just mentioned was long form, the 28-minute shows. So otherwise, you are more down to the numbers Pat was telling about, between 50 and 80 per year. But if you have a lot of long form running, then it's more interesting. But also, yeah, I think short form, long form, original music will always be better, in my opinion,
So the
than
longer format
using.
essentially.
Yeah, exactly, because you don't want to have your competitor have the same music, right? So I don't think, yeah. And also the long form, you need to call to action. So the music is, like Bryan said, it's 50, sometimes 60%, right? If you look like a horror movie without the music, it's not a movie, right? So it is more impact than you know. So I think long form, it's really a must to take original music.
All right, on that topic, Pat, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with all of this. The only thing I would add as sort of the insider knowledge is if you're testing a show first, like Bryan was suggesting, a lot of the marketers do, which they do. Often the test works, they're excited. So they don't take the time to rescore the show, and then it gets rolled out. And then distributing a show might cost $75,000 to $100,000, even digitally, getting all of your numbers and tracking. So now you have a CEO saying, geez, I forgot to do the scoring, and now it's going to be 75 grand just to redistribute the show. So my idea is make sure if you do test and it tests positive, even during that time, be sending your dub of the show without the music to the composer so we can be ready, so that before you go to your rollout, we can improve the sound quality of the music and maybe even the mix. A lot of us do sweetening, and we'll improve not only the music but the sound mix, but you need to do it because it's a real hard sell for all of us to say, hey, we should put original music on that. They've got a hit show. It's been going for 2-3 months. It's got 6 months legs, and they're saying, let's do it in 6 months. And now maybe the show doesn't work as well on the redo. So do it early. Do it often.
Okay. Let's talk about library music for a second. So I used to own a music library as an example, and I would spend time editing it into my show. But let's say I want to participate in this type of opportunity. I mean, can you copy that? How would that work?
We don't say
Let's start with
copy,
Pat.
but it
Oh, go
sounds
ahead,
the
Jeff.
same.
Yeah.
You cannot make a copy of music because then, because of the copyright, etc. But we can make music which sounds the same. It's like
Okay.
similar feeling,
Yeah.
or so that's not really a thing. If you send us the infomercial, short form, long form, we can make any type of music you want. So
Okay, so it could be based off something that you've already chosen from a library, and you guys can just kind of take the same theme and present new options for that. Okay.
I can do this too.
Yeah,
if
go ahead,
you
Pat.
is I'm sure Bryan agrees too, is that, I mean, when we started, Bryan and I were younger and idealistic, and it's like, let us compose from scratch. We don't want to hear the stock music. It's going to influence us and everything. But as I do this longer and longer, the library music sometimes saves us time, in that if they did take time to pick good selections, usually they're quite good now because the library music quality has come up. The problem with it is that you lose continuity, because you might have a really great sounding rock cue and then a country cue and then a ballad, somebody's singing, and you end up getting a sort of a patchwork quilt of a soundtrack, and you lose that continuity. So what I do is, if people want to pick their library music and take their time, I appreciate it. But our job then is to style it like the library music, but create a style of a soundtrack so that you have a theme and you come back to the theme. And a lot of producers will just randomly pick a different piece of music for their testimonials, and they use too many pieces of music. And your testimonial music should have 2 or 3 pieces that we can then recompose. So you're now listening to testimonials. Your call to action should have 1 piece of music, not 3. Now you're at the call to action for branding. So these are the things that I think are essential. But starting with library music, I used to say don't do it. Now I don't mind. I think it could save us time and give us a clue into what kind of a style we're looking at. Copying only the style, the mood, the tempo, the beat, the guitars, if it's acoustic, if it's strings, and we can do that. But we're going to add that continuity that you just can't get out of library music.
All right. Now, some people might be a little intimidated at the perceived cost of doing custom music for like different formats, like long form versus short form, for example. So what are some of the costs versus some of the benefits that we've talked about today? If you could just kind of sharpen that point. Jeffrey, let's start with you.
Yeah, I have a different business model than Pat and Bryan, I think, because we make all the music for free. So it doesn't matter if you have a short form, long form. All the music we produce is for free. So for us, it doesn't matter if it's a 28-minute show, or you have like a small show, or you have a leader of a TV show. It's not really, that's not how we work. So, but I can imagine if you have a long show, you need to make more music, of course. So that.
Okay, Pat, what would you say on that?
Okay, well, rephrase the question again for me, because I was so engaged in Jeffrey's.
Yeah, just trying to understand some of the costs versus benefit of different formats, like obviously the cost of doing a long form score versus a short form score. How does that? Because I think a lot of marketers might be a little intimidated about the cost of scoring customly a 30-minute track, for example, for an infomercial.
Traditionally, the spots do not pay as much of a royalty in the US because it's a shorter amount of music.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes for the composers, that spot takes a long time to compose because, again, as Bryan was saying, it's their branding, and they may want to use it in a lot of different ways. So I will only score a spot if I think that it's for a company that has a chance of airing that spot if the production quality is high enough, because a lot the spots are notorious for being produced for cheap, and then to compose music for that's kind of not a good payoff, because then it ends up flopping. So the way we approach it at Downpat Music is a lot of infomercials now are we score an infomercial and it gets cut down to many formats in the US now. You have 5, you have 3s, you have 2s, you have 30s. So generally we score the spots out of the infomercial, and then we once we have our infomercial themes, and probably Bryan does the same, we will take the themes and we'll condense them and make them work in the spots. Then you get a continuity between your infomercial and your spots. In that case, definitely do the spots, because if you're doing that, the infomercial's working, the spots are supporting the infomercial on air, and now the music all works together. And I just did a package of 30 spots based off of a long form for a unnamed company, but they're in the top 10. And they actually said that half of their airtime purchasing media dollars is in their spots. So in that case, it still may not surpass the royalties on the long form, but it could be a big percentage, and that's yet to be determined, because I'm waiting. You get paid from the royalties 6 to 9 months later. So next year's webinar, I'll give you the case study.
Very good. Bryan,
and I think,
cost versus benefit.
If you're only doing digital or short form, I think it's a harder economic decision to make and a harder one to justify. But as Pat was saying, if you can make a cohesive sound across your long form and then all your cut downs into your short form that then end up being on digital, then that's the best of the worlds, because then your brand is consistent across all those different platforms. So it is tougher when you're just dealing with, if you're only doing digital or you're only doing short form. It's a harder, I would say the economic incentives are not there like they are long form. But in terms of building a brand and realizing that you want your 30 and your 15 and your 5 minutes to all work together, then that's a great reason to do original scoring on those.
So Bryan, I'm in. Just let us know what is required to start, working with a composer like yourself.
Sure, it's pretty simple. Just have to, come to an understanding so that everybody's on the same page as far as how the deal is going to be structured, and that can be a lot of different ways. Sometimes the marketers will end up splitting their royalty with the brand, sometimes not. And sometimes we do packages where we're doing the whole audio post together. So we just discuss that up front, what we're going to do. If we're going to do sound design and all the audio sweetening, that's something we can do. And that, again, makes it sort of a one-stop shop, where once they send that QuickTime show out and OMF or AAF, boom, then they get back final audio files. And it can be very simple. They're not juggling files to the sound designer and they got to get those back and match those with then everything's got to go to an audio house at the end. So that way we can deliver shows really quickly, sometimes 24 hours to 48 hours from receiving the final lock show. So basically a QuickTime is usually delivered. Sometimes it's with music, sometimes without. It's best to have it both ways. If you do have temp music, then send a version with the temp music, a version without the temp music. And then it's just a matter of communication. What are we talking about? What's the expectation? One of the good things, we just talked about temp music, but one of the good things about that is there can be a number of decision makers on the other side from where we're sitting. And that can be the production company, it can be the brand, it can be the mailman who the brand trusts, who shows them your spot, like, on a Saturday afternoon, hey, what do you think about this music? And their cousin and their relative and their brother. So there can be a lot of people with opinions, but it's really good that temp music hopefully will reflect, hey, this is something that everybody on that other team, the marketer side and the brand side, has agreed that generally this works for the brand. And then to communicate, hey, this is what we like about that. This is what we'd like to see improved. And so that's a great starting point. So it's basically a quick time, an agreement, and a creative decision, and you're off to the races.
And Jeffrey, what is required to start working with your company?
Yeah, we have our company. We have like almost 30 composers working in our company. So it depends. We mostly work with brands directly. but do they need church music or merengue or EDM or whatever type of music? We have our composers who are really specialized in certain composing. But yeah, normally if we work with producers, they are used to work with libraries, and it's much easier. They say, look, we need to have this, 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 and then we make it similar, and then it's all off. Or we get the creatives with the current music from brands, and we produce similar sounds. As I told you before, we produce all the music for free, so we always have certified customers, because we will produce the music until the customer approves, right? So the brand or the producer doesn't make any difference. So yeah, if they come to us, it's for most of the times because of the business model. Making the music is one part, but the hard part is getting the royalties, claiming, getting, and that's where I get the gray hairs from. So it's not the making the music. That's the easy part, I always tell. So yeah, different customers, like Bryan tell, 80% is brands directly. We work for Nike, for all big names, Nissan, but also for a DRTV market, like international, Dormio, JML, Dr. Ho, you name it. So a lot of customers directly in the DRTV space. For us, it's easier because it's digital music. It's not, yeah, I cannot say high quality music, but it's not like an album, a Michael Jackson album or something. It's more background music, right? So it's different. Yeah, so if you come to our company, we're really easy, listen to what the customers want, and we always deliver.
Very good, very good. And Pat, what would you add to that?
What I would add is I keep going back to the pandemic because it changed so much of how everyone does business remotely, and who's in business and who's working in person. And I used to do advertise a faster turnaround, and a lot of the people I work with for the faster turnarounds aren't working anymore. So about a year ago, 2 years ago, I decided I'm going to market only to the top agencies, the top CEOs, and it took a while to get through, but now I try and go to the top person to avoid all of the various opinions in between. So that has been working. And what I've also done is trying to get in the process sooner, because there aren't as many hit shows. When I started this, I'd be at a convention, I would get 72 leads for new infomercials in one convention 20 years ago. And 12 of those would result in a show airing from between 12,000 and 80,000 a show of those 12. So that's my model was really good. Now if you go to a convention and get a show or two, you're lucky. I try and handhold the process, and I try and encourage clients to fill in a brand that will air for a year or two. So with that case, I try and get started earlier, and I develop themes with the idea that if they don't like it, we have time to change it, so that when it finally rolls out, they have a soundtrack that we can then re-edit for maybe a couple of years. I think there's a power in keeping the same music on a show. Sometimes music is pulled out of a show, and all of a sudden, the show that's been airing for a year changed. Nobody recognizes the show because the music was part of that brand. So I encourage a longer process for the composing of the infomercials now, just because there's so few. If you have one that works, take your time and get it right.
So Pat, once a show or spot airs, what needs to be done to collect these royalties?
Well, a lot of hair pulling now. Well, for one, we need rights to be able to get a copy of the media schedules, which should include your channel and your station name, the time and date of each airing, and if possible, city and state, in the spreadsheet format of what actually aired. And nobody likes creating these because it's work after the fact. But without those, it's very hard for us to prove that we had the editing. And the most effective way of proving is getting the media schedules, which sometimes are considered, they're confidential, so they're hard to get. There's sometimes multiple agencies or media companies buying the time, so you really need to have a integrator, a person that we can contact that says, you know, these 5 places are buying the time, collect those schedules in order to turn that in. So if I've had a situation where a show aired a couple of thousand times and the PRO thought it aired, you know, I'm not kidding, like maybe 100 times. If you do not send in the schedules, they use a sampling. They will pick up the airings and have a multiplier, and they'll say, our survey saw your show, and we think that it aired 200 times, so we're going to pay you royalties based on 200 airings, when it actually aired 2,000 times. And so then they pay you the 200 airings, and then you have to send them the media schedules and say, gentlemen and ladies, please look at your numbers again, because we have 2,000 verifiable airings. And they usually will send you a makeup check. But that's probably the gray hair part that Jeffrey was talking about earlier. You know, and they used to let you go back and collect many years. I don't know, Bryan, if you remember how many years, but quite a few years you could go back. If somebody couldn't give us the media schedules, we could go back for several years. Now I don't know the exact, is it a year now, Bryan, or a year and a half? It's
about 12 months.
Okay, so they'll let you go back 12 months. So you finally get the media schedules organized, because the person that you know worked your contract with that was going to get you the media schedules is no longer there, and you finally get them in like month 11 to turn them in to possibly get paid for that year. You missed it by a month because it's Christmas, and you just lost $100,000. You know.
So the rabbit hole goes deep on collecting these royalties. Bryan, what would you add? Any interesting stories along those lines?
Yeah, I would definitely say that it runs deep, and there can be a lot of issues with that. But one of the things that you need to do first of all is make sure the cue sheet is filed properly and timely. So that's that's basically a list and a record of all the music that's used in that show, and that needs to get filed with each of the PROs which have a piece of music in that show. So that's one of the first steps. And as Pat was mentioning, there's sometimes multiple media buying companies buying for the same show. It became kind of a trend. And what's interesting is sometimes the marketers would fail to communicate that they've either fired some media buying agencies and hired other ones. So that's kind of constant in flux. So there can be a lot of pieces on that. There can be, we might talk about it a little later too, but grace note titles. Sometimes on TV Guide, shows are getting reported by their grace note title. So, you know, in TV Guide, when you're flipping through, sometimes the marketers will come up with clever names like 5 makeup tips for you, right? And so that BMI thinks that 5 makeup tips for you aired. They don't think Luminette aired, right? And so making sure that you communicate all those titles clearly to your PRO so that they understand each of the kind of AKA titles, also known as titles, so that can be important. And then there is a diligence process. It's a beautiful system, but it's also deeply flawed. Jeffrey might speak that, like in Holland, there's advanced technology that basically music is aired, it gets detected, it gets paid. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different factions still in the USA that is or a big publishing company that they should get paid more. So it's, even though we probably have the technology to pay exactly for what's on air, at this point, it's still a little bit of a black box. So you definitely need a partner that's going to be very, very on top of this. I have staff who, you know, every quarter we're collecting the media buys, we're submitting those. We have some other ways of tracking with using like fingerprinting and watermarking technologies. So we actually independently pay for that and do that, but it allows us to see exactly where our shows are being aired. And again, we subsidize the media buy schedules with that additional information. As you know, sometimes BMI uses some interesting technology that they want to check from 3 different sources. All those sources line up. So if any one of those sources doesn't line up, they sometimes kick it out because they can't really prove that that performance happened. And so a lot of times you could end up losing out on performance that actually happened. So it does take a great deal of due diligence to follow that if you're getting paid for 20 performances, that there wasn't 200 or 200 into 2,000. So it's really important that you a lot of time and that you have a team that has a lot of experience in doing that, because that's sort of the difference between collecting a lot or collecting a very little amount of money.
Interesting. So Jeffrey, how does your team attack this royalty collection process? Unmute.
Tough job, because every PRO has its own systems and their own way to track the titles, the AKs, the music. For example, ASCAP is working with SoundMouse. It's a tracking system, but BMI is what Bryan tells you. It's Gracenote and IMS they use. But basically, it's what Pat is telling you. You need to address every detail to the PRO, not only the title, but also the clock numbers, the airtime schedules. You need to the creative. So you need to approach this like a lawyer and an accountancy, and going in and say to those companies, the PROs, look, I'm entitled to get this money based on our information. I know from the experience we have is that the PROs doesn't look to the media schedules of our advertisers or from the media agencies, because they think they are not the actual airtime. How do you say it? The post logs, the real-time post logs. So they always look at their own real-time systems or tracking system, and that will be for them the way to pay money. But it's like Pat is saying, they have their survey days on the network or the survey days per day, But in the end, you need to go to them and say, look, okay, you pay this money, but we're missing something. And then you have to talk to them personally, go to them. How can we approach this? How do you want us to deliver the data? So you can process this manually, but also digital, and get all the variables, how do you say it, together. And then you always come after 2 years in America, maybe on 98% of what we claim, but it's a tough business. If you are in Europe, it's even worse. But in the Netherlands, where I'm from, it's the most easiest because everything is tracking and you get paid. If I claim 100%, I will get paid like 80% directly. So that's a good thing. In England, the PRS was similar to the US. They also tracking similar to the US and also paying similar. But French and Belgium and Germany, it's way different, and even French and Italy. So yeah. But Canada, America, Western Europe, they're good markets to claim and collect your money. Right. So
let's do this. So this is a big topic. There's a lot to cover, but we're kind of getting toward the end of our allotted time, and I know we want to leave a little bit of room for Q&A. So let me just ask one additional question, and I'm going to direct this to Bryan, and that is this topic of music stripping, what it is and how it's impacting marketers.
Sure. I think a lot of marketers are unaware of this. And I was aware of it from a TV side because, many years ago, I heard about these TV shows, like it would be a successful TV series here in the United States. That show would go to Europe and they would take the music out and put their own music because they were interested in collecting the royalties. So I had a show that was quite successful here in the US. It was starting to air in Europe and the UK. And so we tracked it down and I went to go collect on it. And so when we went to collect on it, they said, well, here's your cue sheet and here's another cue sheet. And so what had happened is it's a DRTV show, but when it went to those foreign territories, that music got replaced by local music. And when I talked to the advertiser about it, the foreign distribution partner had convinced them that they needed local music that would appeal more to that local audience. Knowing what I knew about that industry and the practice of stripping, I would argue that more than likely it's because of the economic interest in that. So marketers may not be aware of that, but the way the TV producers have stopped that is they do not allow a distribution partner to basically replace the music, because if it's generating music in Europe, that is money that the marketer could earn. But if that music's getting replaced with local music, then they're missing out on that. So it's something to be aware of. And again, trying to make sure you're with a good partner that can help track that down, and then be aware of your agreements that you're signing with those distribution partners, of what rights you're giving them, and if you're giving them the right to just replace the music for whatever reason, which might be in their best economic interest and may not be as good as the music that was in there to start with. So even that product may not do as well in that market. So ultimately it's hurting everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the point being that there is this business model that's international, and one has to, as a marketer, be aware and not lose those opportunities if at all possible. So Tom, do we have any questions from our audience today?
We sure do. We have a few good ones, and I'll take you through them here. Hopefully we get some interesting answers. And this is open to anyone. Removing the economic incentives of original music. Are there 2 or 3 key reasons, in your opinion, why a brand would select original versus already published music? And is there a situation where already published music works better?
Who would like to take that?
I can take a crack at it to give Bryan a break here. In the case where published music may work better is if you want to pay for a pop song. How much did Fly Like the Eagle for the U.S. Post Office? I think that was about what was that, like $15 million they paid or something, so they could use that song. So if you have deep pockets, that was a perfect. Fly Like an Eagle for the post office was a great marriage, and we can't copy Fly Like an Eagle and use those words. So if you have a deep pocket, and it's pretty impactful, because people buy what they're familiar with. And if you, the movies will put a pop song in a movie, and it might make that movie or that scene or that advertisement. So that would be a time when you would use it. Bryan, did you want to add to that?
Sure. I was actually involved with the brand that I did that for. It was actually the Luminous brand, and they wanted to use Turn Back Time, which was recorded by Cher, but not written by Cher. So in that sense, that lyric, right, works so well. If I could turn back time, and you're talking about a beauty brand and turning back the clock, it works super, super well. So the creative Patrick Raymond on that came up with that idea, and then they came to me. So I helped to license. So there's 2 different rights. There's a master recording right and a sync right. So I negotiated the sync right, and then rather than pay Cher a huge sum of money for her rights, and what the brand did is they asked me to recreate that song and use a local singer who had been on The Voice and was super, super talented. But we could do that for a fraction of what they would have paid. So they got the best of that familiarity, and at the same time, they saved a serious amount of money. So there are times where, you know, that nostalgia, that's the reason you hear it in some traditional advertising and people paying huge money for songs. So there are times where you want to do that because you want to have that nostalgia, or you want to have that music. But if it's just truly like instrumental to instrumental, then I think there's advantages on the original side, because you can do something totally unique for that brand, and it can, again, carry with that brand. Where if you're licensing that, even if you were licensing the Eagle song, whatever, you probably you might get it for 6 weeks, or you might get it for 6 months if you pay a lot of money, but then it's going to go away and you can't use it any longer. Where if you paid for original music, then you're going to be able to, that will be able to follow the brand in perpetuity. So you'll be able to continue that branding and don't have to start again or pay a huge fee to use it for another 6-month period.
You know, I'll add, and Jeffrey might have an idea on this too, is that as I do this longer and longer, the power of music and familiarity is unbelievable on humans. You know, just 3 notes timed to your brand's logo, you know, dun 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 dun, you know, these little, and it's like, wow, you know. And I just recently did a 3-note theme for a legal company, and we spent quite a couple of weeks coming up with combinations of 3 notes, whether they're syncopated, the order of the notes. And when I finished this, it aired, and I was at home, and it popped on the TV. This has happened to all of us, and we hear it, dun 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 dun. I'm like, oh, wait, am I still at work? I just heard the theme, and I knew right away it was that show. And now that darn thing is going to be playing thousands of times. And that combination of those notes with that graphic on that show can last years. And a lot of my clients say that the theme of the music is what people remember their brand difference for, like, tax. I think it was Optima Tax Relief. They remember their brand over other brands because it's Optima Tax Relief or whatever. They hear that and they're like, oh, you guys do that one. Yeah, but they don't even remember anything, but there's a memory that's associated with melody in the head. Alzheimer's patients, my mom had Alzheimer's, she could sing songs and remember melodies with the words, but she couldn't speak. So there's something really, really powerful about, even in original music, you can create that really powerful, simple idea that all pop songs are looking for, a 2-bar or a 1-bar really good hook. They're all looking for that. You can build a whole song on it. And that's what we're looking for you as a composer for your brand. And then that's going to not get ripped out because it's really part of that product's identity. And I'm doing more of these lately because I think they're so powerful. We used to, you know, take them for granted as composers. We always want to do some real complex thing that's going to do all of these layers and guitars and singers. And really, it can just be something, three notes with your brand that sticks with it for years, that makes people remember it. Because you can hear audio and not see the TV and know that that is on. And so it's really powerful. I would highly recommend. You know, that's, I think, the biggest benefit of original music is it's called original for a reason, and I think it's worth it to dedicate that original piece to your show. So for your composer, you should, to Bryan's word about it, the music can last with your campaign forever. That's really valuable, and that it's the only place you're going to hear that series of notes. That's really valuable.
That's great. That's great. Good things to think about. Tom, we have probably time for a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah. This is actually a plea for help. We are an agency production company. Many of our short form commercials use jingles. I'm the lyricist and use an outside composer. My company is the publisher. I have many spots running currently, and I have a spot running over 15 years and not collected a dime. By the way, I'm an ASCAP member for many years. I found it almost impossible to get any information from media agencies. What do I do?
Oh, interesting. Jeff, you want to take this?
Yeah, so to collect your money, you need to own or to get the real-time airtime schedules. So as a producer, you only produce your creative, right? You're not the owner of you're not buying the media yourself. So or you go to Joseph and you have DR metrics, right? Then you can get your airtime schedule, and then you can claim your own music. If you are the publisher and also the composer. So then you can claim 100%. Just what I mentioned before, it's all about delivering the right data, the AKA, the titles, not putting a 0 or a 1 in your title because you don't get paid anything. It's all about those things. Just make sure you will get the real-time post logs from all the airings. Doesn't matter if it's a 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or 28-minute shows. You can collect everything, but you need to give it in the right. My personal experience is that we get the most money out of. You have 3 PROs in the US: CSAC, BMI, ASCAP, and also a 4th one who's doing the digital. But what Pat has mentioned before, radio digital is still, in comparison to TV, pocket money or small money. So if you really want to have a lot of money from your royalties, you need to focus on TV, national or cable, and yeah, you need to get these airtime schedules yourself, and then you can claim your music better and get more money out of it.
Great answer.
One of the things to add on that real quick is you need an advocate at ASCAP. So I don't know if you know Sean Lamone, but he's a high executive there, but you need somebody like that to explain, hey, I'm an ASCAP writer, I'm not getting paid, help me through the process, because somewhere in that process, we talked about how complicated it is to collect, so somewhere in your process there's a breakdown. So I would encourage starting there. And the media schedules, it is possible to get those. Sometimes it takes a lot of perseverance and determination to get those, and repeat phone calls and repeat emails, but diligence is something that we practice daily in order to make sure that everything gets filed on time.
And then in closing on that, CSAC, I heard, just stop paying on spots for music royalties altogether, which I was sad to hear. I don't know if you heard about that, Bryan, yet. Yeah. If you were going to CSAC, well, that's not going to be you're out of luck there. If you also, the PROs traditionally don't even take media schedules for short form. They have their own way of collecting. You need to make sure, and I assume you did this, that you send a copy of your spot with the form filled out for that. But spots are going to be a bigger challenge. If you reach out to Bryan or myself, we might be able to help you look into that and see if we can help you with our contacts, even though we didn't write the music, just because we're trying in this to represent all of us composers as a whole. Because if we don't come together with the publishers and the marketers, the PROs keep the money. And now if you don't collect it within 12 months, they keep it forever. And I know for sure, because I know people that have looked at these funds, because I know people that have looked over the heads and see what is not collected. And it's tens of millions of dollars go uncollected because it's not claimed. So it's there. So maybe Bryan or I should be able to at least look into that for you.
So Tom, we're at the top of the hour.
Is that from the US? If it's anything international, I defer to Jeffrey. I don't know if that question was for a US airing, international, or all.
All right, Tom.
All right, folks, I'm going to jump back in here. Great job, everybody. We had a couple other questions out there, but hopefully we'll have a chance to get to them next time, or we can actually send them along to you guys if you want to react to them and share the answers with the folks who asked. So thank you all, Pat, Jeffrey, Bryan, Joseph, just seeing you in the order I see you on my screen. We really appreciate the effort and the time and the expertise. Thank you to our Workshop Council for bringing us today's event. If you're a PDMI member and would like to get involved in any of our 7 councils, you can reach out to me directly today, and we'll find a place for you. Your next opportunity to attend a PDMI live event online is next Wednesday, December 13th at 2 o'clock Eastern. 11 a.m. Pacific, when the Brand Response Council airs its latest episode of Take 20, a look back at the key moments of 2023. To register, please visit thepdmi.com/take-20. Finally, online registration is open now for PDMI East, April 8th through 10th at Eden Rock, Miami Beach. With a wide array of educational networking events planned for leaders like you, PDMI East will be Performance Marketers' must-attend event of the spring. When you get your badge now, priced at just $3.95 for members and $5.95 for non-members, you'll be guaranteed access to all the show has to offer, and you'll also be at the head of the line to book your room at the host hotel. Visit thepdmi.com/PDMI-East to get your badge today. Thank you again for joining us. Be well. Happy holidays. Take care. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays, everyone.